Hey everyone, the first Republican presidential debate is taking place on August 23rd, 2023 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It seems to me like every election cycle starts earlier and earlier than the last one. For all of 2023 and even before that, I've been hearing a lot of conversations about the Republican primary. Because of this, I thought it would be fun to take a look at every major Republican candidate for president. While I will report the facts in this video, I do have my own personal biases that may impact the way that I talk about certain things. Believe it or not, you're going to hear some personal opinions in this video, but I trust you enough as an audience to separate that from the facts and make up your own mind. I might even throw in a joke here and there, but don't take me too seriously. There is a Squishmallow wearing an Ushanka on my bed. His name is Oxford. If you have any disagreements, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I even wore my little seal shirt, but you can't really see it in the video. This election has been very dramatic, of course, with former President Donald Trump seeking the Republican nomination for the third time while facing various court cases. Despite the indictments, Trump continues to dominate the Republican polls, and it looks very unlikely that anyone else is going to beat him at this point. The 2024 election will be quite unique if Trump is the nominee, as it will be the first time in over 100 years that two men that have already been president are running against each other. While yes, Trump will almost certainly win the Republican primary, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I thought it would be fun to take a look at a couple of the Republican candidates. First off is Trump himself, who took the world by storm in 2015 on that fateful escalator. Trump was seen as a wildcard candidate, someone who was politically incorrect and at times quite funny, though whether you're laughing with him or at him probably depends on your political affiliation. He of course went on to win the Republican nomination and the general election in one of the biggest upsets in modern political history. For better or worse, Trump's victory shocked the nation in a way that we've never really seen before. He energized both his supporters and those who were against him in ways unlike any other candidate in recent memory. Trump's presidency and re-election campaign would be defined by the coronavirus pandemic and his handling of it. During the 2020 election, Trump made various unfounded claims of voter fraud, constantly saying that the election was rigged against him. This ultimately culminated in the January 6th insurrection at the US Capitol. Since leaving political office, Trump has refused to stay quiet and has inserted himself more and more in the narrative as we grow closer to the 2024 election. Despite his unpopularity among the general electorate, Trump is very popular in the Republican primary demographic and will likely become the Republican nominee. President Joe Biden is also pretty unpopular in his own right, so don't underestimate Trump in 2024. No one said he was going to win in 2016, and look at where we are now. Next up on our list of candidates is Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is actually my governor here in the beautiful state of Florida, who narrowly won his election against Andrew Gillum in 2018. In the subsequent years, DeSantis has managed to turn the purple state of Florida into a pretty solid red state, which, whether you like him or not, is very impressive. Even more so than Trump, DeSantis' time in office has been very defined by the COVID-19 pandemic. Seen as very anti-lockdown, DeSantis was reminiscent of Trump while being a little more establishment-friendly. Funny enough, his victory in the 2018 Republican gubernatorial primary is often attributed to Trump's endorsement of him in that race. He even released this cringeworthy ad, which is really funny to look back on.
Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
The Florida governor has even at points seemed to adopt some of Trump's mannerisms while speaking in public. DeSantis' governorship made him one of the most popular figures in Republican politics nationwide, and talks soon started of him succeeding Trump as the Republican heir apparent. If Trump wasn't seeking re-election, this would be DeSantis' race to lose, but as you know, that is not the case. The funny thing about the DeSantis campaign is that he was actually highest in the polls before declaring his candidacy. For several months, DeSantis flirted with the idea of running without actually being in the race, which seems to have hurt his presidential ambitions.
Governor, polls show you falling behind Trump. Any thoughts on that?
I'm not a candidate, so we'll see if and when that changes.
Part of the reason DeSantis is losing support could also be due to his lack of charisma, especially when compared to Trump. Homie's out here looking like Homelander at the Homie's out here looking like Homelander on the campaign trail. The Florida governor finds himself in between a rock and a hard place, as he's been hesitant to criticize the still popular former president while struggling to get people to see him as an alternative. DeSantis emerged as the favorite candidate of the Republican political establishment, such as Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. But even that has waned as his candidacy has proven to be quite underwhelming. While the Republican base loved DeSantis' handling of COVID, that seems pretty far in the rearview mirror right now. After COVID, DeSantis' new big thing has been wokeism.
Woke ideology. Woke ideology. Woke executives. Florida is where woke goes to die.
I frankly don't think this is the winning issue that DeSantis and other Republican politicians seem to think that it is. It just seems to mean less and less every day, and it's gotten to the point where even Donald Trump, who used to say woke himself, now agrees with that.
And I don't like the term woke because I hear woke, woke, woke. You know, it's like just a term that use half the people can't even define it. They don't know what it is. A lot of things going on with our military, with the woke and all this nonsense. They're not learning to fight and protect us from some very bad people.
While DeSantis is still in second place, it is a very distant second. The third presidential candidate that we're going to talk about today is Donald Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence. An important detail about the Pence candidacy is his falling out with Trump. As vice president, Pence presided over the certification of electoral votes on January 6 of 2021. There had been pressure from Trump on Pence to not certify the election results, which Pence resisted. This resulted in some members of the January 6 rioters shouting "Hang Mike Pence" repeatedly as they charged the Capitol. Pence is, of course, famous for being a very socially conservative evangelical Christian. The former governor of Indiana was brought onto the Trump campaign for this very reason, as they thought it would aid Trump with his so-called New York values amongst evangelicals and other religious Republicans. Despite his vice presidency, he has failed to garner much political support, even amongst evangelicals, which are supposed to be his base. Our next candidate is Vivek Ramaswamy, a millionaire businessman who has decided to throw his hat into the ring. Like DeSantis, Vivek talks a whole lot about wokeness. He frames things a little differently, saying that things like so-called climatism, wokeism, and COVIDism are replacing Christianity as religions in an increasingly secular America. Ramaswamy has some political ideas that come off pretty token if you ask me, such as raising the voting age or requiring that American citizens pass a civic test or join the military in order to gain the right to vote. Surprisingly, Ramaswamy has managed to gain some traction. Some Republican polls show him in third place as of the time of me recording this video. Part of this may be that he's done a better job than other candidates such as DeSantis at contrasting himself from Trump while not outright attacking him. Even Trump himself seems to have some personal fondness for Ramaswamy.
I think that's the sanctimonious, but he's rapidly being caught by Ramaswamy. Who's good?
My honest guess is that if Trump were to be president again, there's probably a cabinet position in store for Ramaswamy, kind of like Pete Buttigieg in 2020. He also performed "Lose Yourself" by Eminem on the campaign trail, which, while kinda cringe, does at least appear a little more genuine than some of the other candidates. Christie is a funny guy. While the former governor of New Jersey is one of the more politically talented of the primary candidates, it's widely believed that he missed his chance by not running in the 2012 Republican primary when his political star was much brighter. Christie is interesting as he served as a sort of proto-Trump.
Sit down and shut up.
A rude and bashful Northeastern Republican who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty and be a bully during debates. He ran for the Republican nomination in 2016, but it seems like he tried to rein in some of the more unpleasant aspects of his own personality. It is quite ironic then that Donald Trump of all people went on to win that primary, perhaps the only candidate with more of a reputation for rudeness than Christie himself. Christie would then serve as a political advisor to Trump during his presidency before having a falling out with him. There seems to be a pattern here. Christie is said to have gotten COVID-19 while coaching Donald Trump for his presidential debates against Joe Biden in 2020. The former New Jersey governor became quite ill and nearly died in the hospital. Trump reportedly contacted Christie during this time to make sure Christie wasn't going to tell people that it was Trump who gave it to him. Since this and the subsequent January 6 riot, Christie has been an outspoken Trump critic. In 2016, Christie famously used himself as a kamikaze to take down Marco Rubio, and it's being said that his 2020 campaign is an attempt to do the same to Trump. But as of the time that I'm recording this video, it seems like Trump isn't going to go to the debates, so let's see how that works out for him. For some reason, Trump has decided to make Christie's weight a central part of his attacks against him.
No, Christie's, he's eating right now. He can't be bothered. Sir, please do not call him a fat pig. That's very disrespectful. Don't call him. See, I'm trying to be nice. Don't call him a fat pig. You can't do it. You can't do that.
While you shouldn't make fun of anybody for their weight, these comments are really funny coming from Trump, who is himself overweight. Unlike some of the other candidates, Christie has been pretty candid about the fact that he probably won't be president, though I'm sure he would still love to be. Both Pence and Christie are funny examples of how personal problems can often separate politicians more than any ideological disagreements. Next up is Nikki Haley, who, if I'm being honest, is pretty boring. The former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador is someone that has been gearing up for a presidential campaign for a long time. Despite that, there's not really anything that's terribly interesting about her. She was a member of the Trump administration, and she said that she wouldn't run against him if he ran in 2024, but here she is.
I would not run if President Trump ran.
Haley is the daughter of Indian immigrants and has made her background a prominent part of her campaign. This is very ironic, as some Republicans seem to be really against identity politics until they use it to serve their own agendas. I don't envy Haley's position as the only woman in the field, and a woman of color at that. Her rise in South Carolina politics and conservative politics more broadly is impressive, but I don't really know if she's the type of candidate the GOP is looking for in 2024. Maybe next time. Haley hasn't directly criticized Trump very often, and has instead opted to engage in one of my least favorite political platitudes: we need a new generation. This in particular has always come off to me as painfully vapid and devoid of any substance whatsoever. Haley is an incredibly standard conservative who agrees with every other candidate on almost everything. So her identity and youth relative to some of the other candidates are the only thing that she really has to bring up. I'm not even trying to beat up too much on just Nikki Haley here. It's just that so many of these candidates have the exact same ideology. Unfortunately for Haley, she won't even have the full support of her home state, as South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is also in the race. Scott has so far run his campaign largely based off of his admirable background story. He was raised in poverty by a single black mother and managed to find a way out despite all the odds being against him. While this is also a case of identity politics, it comes off a little more genuine to me personally. After DeSantis' fall in the polls, the Republican establishment seems to have chosen Scott as their candidate of choice. Like some of the other candidates, Scott is just relatively uninteresting. He's the sort of Republican candidate that you might see on a show like The West Wing. He shares the same sort of Ronald Reagan conservative values as almost every other candidate in the primary field, which again is just boring. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has also flirted with running, but so far it seems like he isn't. But that didn't stop Trump from making that really bizarre comment about him. There are also a bunch of nobodies running. Everyone I've mentioned so far, other than Trump and maybe DeSantis, has almost no chance of becoming president in 2024, so you can imagine what I'm gonna say about the next few. When I first wrote this video, I completely forgot about Miami Mayor Francis Suarez's presidential campaign, despite being in Miami the day before and living in South Florida. So far, the most I've heard about his campaign is when he didn't know what a Uyghur is.
Will you be talking about the Uyghurs in your campaign?
What, the what?
The Uyghurs.
What's a Uyghur?
Okay, we'll come back to that. You won't be. You got to get smart on that.
Which is okay if you're an everyday person, but if you're a presidential candidate, you might want to know that. There's also people like Asa Hutchinson, Doug Burnham, Larry Elder, and let's face it, these people just aren't going to be president. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also make sure to leave a comment down below on what you thought, because I'd love to hear your feedback. If you're a Republican, let me know who you're supporting in the Republican primary and why. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.